Well, it's not a victory Monday, but Texas's defense did do a damn good job. We're here on Orange Bloods Live. Alex Dunlap and Cody Carpentier, brought to you by Man Eye Institute. Go check out the Man Eye Institute, 184 WOW 2020. Alex, you just got done doing the defensive deep dig, and I tracked a lot of the defensive stuff over the weekend. It's weird. One of the biggest standouts is Leonga Lafau and Ethan Burke and Grayson Littleton off the hoof when you're watching it on Saturday. I'm interested what you kind of thought when you got to the deep dig and who kind of stood out. And of course, I think the biggest conversation has to be which one of these defensive tackles kind of stood out above and beyond all of them. Where do you want to start with your defensive deep dig this week?
Well, I mean, as far as the defensive tackles, there were five of them that played, right? So it was Murad Watson, Hero Canoe, Alex January, Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw. And that was the group that played as far as the dudes on the interior. It was interesting because if you paid attention to what was happening with Hero Canoe, now whenever Texas went to its kind of its heavier package, right, to where they put one of the, instead of putting Ethan Burke in there, they put in one of the defensive tackles. And then they move Ethan Burke over there to Colin Simmons' spot over on rundowns. They would put Canoe in there during those. And so what that resulted in was Hero Canoe, his first snap at Texas, it wasn't even at interior defensive line. It was a strong side defensive end. Canoe actually played the most snaps of any Texas interior defensive line player in this game, mainly because he played at both that SDE spot, and he also just played a bunch at defensive tackle and a three technique. So in all, he played the most of anybody. He played 61% of snaps versus Ohio State. So that was more snaps than like the guys that were the snap percentage leaders last year, the far and away leaders. Like I think so. Alfred Collins last year averaged 56% of snaps. That 61% for Hero Canoe. 56 last year for Alfred Collins. 53% last year for Vernon Broughton. So when we look at, just sort of like the overall distribution of snaps as far as who played the most, if I can just get it pulled up here, I probably should have had it pulled up before we started. We pressed record, Cody, but I believe it went Canoe, Watson, Brevard, not here.
Canoe, Watson, January, Brevard, Shaw.
And you know what? Cole Brevard was more productive than any of them. In the deep digs grading scale, he graded out, tied with Leonga Lafau as the most productive player on the defense, generating 9.75% of the defensive production, basically in a tier one with Cole Brevard, Leonga Lafau, and Michael Taft. But Cole Brevard, I only had him for 20 snaps. I know that'll be different from what you see at PFF, but PFF's cockamamie, and they consider having played snaps like snaps that you line up against victory formation, these snaps that are on like punt return, these snaps that are on plays that are nullified by penalty, stuff like that. But it was 20 just perfectly clean defensive snaps, and on those he was in on a couple of tackles, but then also in on one. Let me just see how many. I think he had four run stuffs in this game. So Cole Brevard in this game had one solo tackle, 2 assisted tackles, and 4 run stuffs. Cody, that's more run stuffs in this game. He's immovable. That's more run stuffs in this game than the rest of the whole defense combined. The rest of the defense combined for only 3 more run stuffs. Travis Shaw had 1. Leonga Lafau had 1. Trey Moore had 1. Cole Brevard had 4. He's impossible to move.
That one play, we got tagged in it on Twitter, but there was a one play where he held up, I think it was like either center guard tackle or center guard or whatever the combination. It was 3 dudes that were trying to move Brevard. He just kind of fire plug, just I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to move me. That was a big standout. And Canoe, I think the Canoe thing was most interesting. When I got done on Saturday night and we all did write-ups, post-game thoughts, I guess, from the game. And my takeaway was, man, I think this defense is really good. And 2 thoughts I had coming out of it was I felt like You talked about it with Canoe. Canoe played a lot of like his abilities were how do I say this? He had a diverse portfolio of places at which he lined up during the game, and I thought that was interesting. And I had the question for you because I didn't go back and count the snaps of the formations and stuff, but I felt like they ran a lot of like 52 fronts, and Canoe being in there with that heavy package. I think when I looked at the alignments in the second half specifically, it felt like the first play of the drive was a lot of times it was Canoe, Shaw, Brevard, and then you also had like Vosick and Moore. It was Canoe, Watson, Shaw, Burke, and Moore. Umusulo, January, Watson, Jackson was an interesting one. Watson, Brevard, Canoe. You had Moore and Simmons. Canoe, Brevard, January. You had Burke and Moore. It was a lot of like these 52 fronts. And I'm not sure if you categorized them that way or not, but it felt like a lot of time, and I'm going to angle this in with Trey Moore. Trey Moore's role, which we've talked about a lot this summer, felt like I know he's listed outside linebacker. He's outside linebacker. They transitioned him to linebacker. It felt like he was on the line of scrimmage a lot.
And no, he was. But see, like you keep going at 52. I don't think it technically is because he's a linebacker by designation. But there were times where it kind of looked like one of those eagle type of Eagles. Yeah. No, I mean I get what you're saying for sure. I thought that Trey Moore. I thought that Trey Moore looked good. It was interesting. Do you know who? Do you know about? Let me just show you this play by Murad Watson. Can you guys see this?
I got it.
Okay, let me turn off the volume.
Was this the one where he slides?
There's two of them, but I mean, just keep this guy needs to learn how to move his feet a little bit better. Like come into engagement, man. You got to move your feet. That was the second play of the game. They came right back to that on the first C.J. Donaldson touchdown. Where they ran it right over him as well, and they put him 4 yards back into the. I think that was one where they kind of looked at the tape and they said, like, man, this is a guy. He needs to. As far as Murad Watson, just comparing him to Cole Brevard, it wasn't what I was expecting to see, but there were some nice flashes he had. He did hold up well in some of these spots, but there was some definite kind of play strength stuff with him. Initial positioning, disengagement type of issues. I think that over the next 3 games, he's going to be encouraged to really work on that stuff. And I just think he needs to move his feet a little bit better. We didn't see any Levon Johnson in this game. If we're just looking at the overall grades as far as how they graded out, as far as their productivity in this one, Cole Brevard was just, way ahead of all of them. And second place would have been Alex January, who, as far as his production, just had a little bit better production, but not quite as efficient at 8.4 snaps per production caused. Cole Brevard sitting at 3.33, which will obviously regress because that would be the best in the 13-year history of the deep dig to ever occur. So that's not going to stay, but 8.4 for January is good. Travis Shaw was the next up. He a little bit less production. Then, the exact same amount of production. So tied for 11th place on the team with Alex January, but only on 16 snaps. So he was generating production once every 6.4 snaps. Hero Canoe played the most, but he wasn't necessarily productive, generating production once every 15 snaps. And Murad Watson played 26 snaps, but the only production that he generated was one assisted tackle, which in the system counts for half of a point. So technically, he generated production once every 52 snaps. That's gonna fix itself too, but just kind of interesting to see how those things all sort of played out as far as the defensive line. I'm not sure that they're going to want to keep playing Hero Canoe for 61 having him play more snaps than we saw out of Alfred Collins or Vernon Broughton last year feels a little strange.
Well, I will say this, according to our camp intel, going out there, like my first instinct in looking at this defensive line group was that he was in the best shape of everybody. So it doesn't really shock me. It didn't shock me to see him play the most snaps amongst the defensive line group. I think also combining that with the fact that it was Ohio State and he had the most familiarity with those guys makes sense. I think you're right, though. I don't think as the stretch goes on, he's going to be seeing 60+% unless this is the role he's going to end up playing in, which is just this I don't know, Swiss Army knife of sorts amongst the defensive line, being, the least beefy of the group. Speaking of beef, Texas Beef Traders. We're going to be at Texas Beef Traders on Thursday night before the
Guys, come out to this, man. There's gonna be free food. I'm gonna bring up some free beers. Cody's coming all the way into town, man. We're gonna be celebrating before we get to head out of town and go out to deer camp and try and shoot some axis and get to watch Texas football out there in the hill country, man. It's gonna be a big celebration. You guys should come out, hang out with us, man. It's this Thursday. We'll probably get there early. It's gonna be an awesome time, dude. And it always is a great time up there. And of course, you always get 10% off at Texas Beef Traders whenever you are there with us and the crew. We also are selling the Alpha seasoning up there. So you can, if you haven't been wanting to buy it because you want to pay shipping, you can go up there and just buy it right from Darren. And they keep it on stock. But you guys won't ever believe the beef there. And, Darren will be cooking something up super, super special. So a live show, live recording. Everybody says, bring back the live shows. Your pre-records only do 5x, 6x more views, but we want you to bring back the live ones. We're going to bring back the live ones at Texas Beef Traders 4 times this year at least, and the first one will be this Thursday.
So mark your calendars because those are the games right there. You can see San Jose, Sam Houston, Vandy, and Arkansas. So those are the weekends that we're shooting for at Texas Beef Traders. Alex, one more question about the D-line. I know we got to get moving on, maybe talk about some of these DBs. Lance Jackson got in for 6 snaps in this game. So did Zena for 5 snaps and Brad Spence for 4. What of those 3 numbers or players shocked you the most?
Well, so Lance Jackson starts the year as Ethan Burke's direct backup. Brad Spence starts the season as Colin Simmons' direct backup. Zena Yamuzulo came in after Brad Spence, but he actually played one more snap in the game than Spence did. What's interesting to me is neither of Ethan Burke's backups, and look, they only played like 4 and 5 snaps each, right? Minuscule samples. But Lance Jackson was ahead of Colton Vasek. He came in before he did. Neither of them generated any production. The only 2 guys who played in this game that generated 0 production, right? Even Xavier Filsaime, who I only had for 1 snap in this game, he technically generated production because he got part of a lockdown bonus because he's a DB, right? So if you could, it just made me think like, well, what about Justice Terry? I mean, if like, could there be over the course of the next 3 he's the kind of player that you want to get going a little bit during his freshman season. So he comes into year 2 with some playing experience under his belt. Like I said, minuscule sample. We can't draw anything from like 4 and 5 snaps from these 2 players, right? Lance Jackson's a great player. Colton Vosig's great, but it's they didn't do anything to say like, all right, well, this dude's certainly got to have him in over Justice. Clearly they didn't have Justice play for a reason, but he's one dude who was, I'm like, man, I would have expected to see, Justice Terry out here during this football game at some point, and we just didn't.
There was one time, I think it was Zena who came in. Zena's 14, Justice Terry's 15, Zena's 19, Spence is 14, Terry's 15.
Yeah.
So there was one time in the game, and I was watching the game pretty much like all times, like 3-4 minutes behind, trying to like rewind, fast forward, get caught up, whatever. And at one point, I think it was Zena that came in, and I was like, oh, Justice Terry. And then I like fast forwarded a second and he moved, and I was like, oh, that's not Justice.
That guy's too tall and too skinny to be Justice Terry, right?
Like, damn it.
Yeah. No, it's
come in.
Yeah. So we did not see any Justice Terry. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from the defense, Cody, is that for one, not many plays at all. And it was a game where in any game where you see like Anthony Hill that doesn't show up in like the top tier of this thing, when you have your big dogs, you have your I mean, Anthony Hill not really making any of these big flash or sizzle plays. Colin Simmons didn't either, although Colin Simmons did have 2 quarterback hits and 1 quarterback pressure that nobody's gonna remember.
Yep.
Right. But it was like Cole Brevard has 4 sick run stuffs. You had Grayson Littleton with the PBUs, and even Manny Muhammad had at least 1 nice PBU, right? Only 1 missed tackle in this game. So it's like it was a really workmanlike performance from this Texas defense, who, when you look at it and you say, all right, well, so the guys who are generally uber productive in this game really weren't in their traditional ways where the fireworks are really, really going off around your Ant Hills and around your Colin Simmonses and around your Jelani McDonalds and, Michael Taffs and these types of players, right? So whenever it's like, what it was a workmanlike performance, right? Wherever if the offense just played the whole game like they did in the fourth quarter, they probably, I mean, they win the football game. They probably
Yep.
win the football game
Yep.
easily and going away, right? And thanks to thanks to the way that the defense played, holding this team to 14 points. And so you think to yourself, you get to thinking, all right, if that's the baseline, one missed tackle, all this kind of under the radar, really productive stuff from some of these guys you don't really consider your usual contributors, right? Now, what happens down the stretch of the season whenever your stars start making those big flash plays and when those fireworks really start? And when that happens, I mean, that's going to be a show.